Hello everyone, it's the Space Chaser again. Welcome to part 5 of my journey through Nottingham from Bulwell to the River Trent, following the route of the Great Central Railway's London Extension, or Great Central Main Line as it was also known. In part 4 we saw the remains of Carrington Station. I'll put the links to the other parts of this series in the description to this one, and indeed in all the descriptions, so you can follow them if you haven't seen them already. Now at Carrington we said the line went into Mansfield Road Tunnel, 1,189 yards long. It came out of Mansfield Road Tunnel into a large cutting that contained Victoria Railway Station, and you can just about see the other end of the tunnel there beyond the car park. Since I last came about 10 years ago, they've built this wire fence up. It used to be just this low fence that's below, so you could just look over it quite well. You can see the size of the cutting that Victoria was in. You see the scale of the walls. It had two island platforms, 1,200 feet long. At each end of both of them there were some bay platforms for local trains that were 400 feet long. To build Victoria, the Great Central had to demolish 1,300 houses, 24 pubs and a church. So it was a huge station. It closed in September 1967 and it was almost immediately demolished and redeveloped so they could build the Victoria Centre. You see these signs now for exciting mixed-use developments. Well, the Victoria Centre was one of the first of those. There were shops, there were flats, there was a bus station which used to be enclosed. The bus station is still there, but it's in the open air now. But yeah, Victoria was huge. There were two footbridges. One spanned the entire width of it and maintained a public right of way from one side to the other. The bridge I'm standing on is the modern day equivalent to that. The other one connected the platforms in the normal way you might expect at a railway station. There was also lifts and a subway underneath it for parcels and goods traffic, so it didn't clash with the passengers going across the platforms. As well as the platforms, there were through lines. There were also loops for freight trains to stand on and wait for passenger trains to pass them, and it was a huge affair. It went back down into two tracks to go into another tunnel at the other end, which was a tunnel with three names. It's variously known as Victoria Street Tunnel, Weekday Cross Tunnel, and I've always known it as Thurland Street Tunnel. It was 418 yards long. You can sometimes still see the portal of it at this end. If you go down into the basement of the Victoria Centre car park, there is a set of service doors which are sometimes open, and if they are open you can see the tunnel mouth. But I've been down there before I started filming this and they're not open, so you can't see it. So I'm going to move around. We're going to go around to the other end of Thurland Street Tunnel, or Weekday Cross Tunnel, call it what you will. But first of all I'm going to show you a couple of bits of Victoria that do remain. So I've got a postcard view there of the front of Victoria. You can see how it used to look. The clock tower there and the hotel in the distance. So there is the clock tower. I believe when they demolished Victoria they were going to demolish that as well, but they decided in a fit of conscience to keep it. It's been repaired with non-matching bricks, but it still looks quite magnificent, as you can see. Very nice indeed. And just beyond that there's the Hilton Hotel, which was the Great Central's station hotel basically. Any railway station worth its salt had a hotel attached to it, and that was the Great Central's. Very grand indeed, and it's good that that has survived. Now somewhere under my feet is a girder bridge. The line passed under Parliament Street and it was carried on a big girder bridge which has been completely built into all the development. You can't see the sides of it, but it is still apparently under my feet. And then it went into the tunnel with many names, Thurland Street, Victoria Street, Weekday Cross. So because the service doors aren't open you can't see any of it from the Victoria Centre car park, so I'm going to go to where the other end of the tunnel was, but I'll show you a couple of scenes on the way. So this is Thurland Street. I'm looking back towards Victoria because the sun is playing havoc with me. Typically it's been overcast for about 2 weeks, and the one day I go filming the sun is causing chaos. Now the tunnel was under here. It was built in two separate parts really, two different methods. The first bit under Thurland Street itself was done by cut and cover, so they dug a big trench in the middle of the street, took the road out, shored up the buildings. Most of these buildings were here at the time the railway was constructed, and people do get annoyed if the shop or office falls into your railway construction, so they shored them up, put the railway in, covered it up back over again, and then put the road back. A little bit further on, where it goes under the street there, it was done in a normal method with a tunnelling machine. The Great Central was built late enough to actually use tunnelling machines, not navvies doing it by hand. And apparently there is a step in the roof line of the tunnel where it goes from one method of construction to the other. Yeah, just another look back. So I'm standing on top of the tunnel now as I do this. So here we are at the end of the tunnel with many names, the other end of it. Until 2007 you can actually see the portal at this end, but then they built this building, the Nottingham Centre for Contemporary Art, now known as Nottingham Contemporary. The website for it waxes lyrical about the design, and yeah, it's distinctive and it's quite nice. But I'm not a big fan of it because it blocks the view of the tunnel mouth. I wish they built it forward so you could still see the tunnel. Now here the railway resembles something out of a model railway or a train set. It emerged from the tunnel into a very short cutting, in which was a junction. You can see the retaining walls at the side of the cutting there. And then almost immediately went out onto two viaducts. The line went off to the left, a connection to the Great Northern Railway. It went down from London Road High Level Station to join the lines out of London Road Low Level and out of Midland. And the main line carried straight on, the Great Central line that we're following. On about the alignment where the tram's going just in the distance there. The Great Central's viaduct survived until around 2003. It was earmarked for use, or possible use, by the tram, but in actual fact it was found to be unsuitable. I think it wasn't at the right height, so they knocked it down and built a replacement out of concrete for the tram. The Great Northern one survived till 2014. It was a really nice structure actually. It would have made a good Highline type park thing, as they're proposing in a lot of places, but unfortunately in 2014 it was demolished and the area that it ran through was redeveloped. Some of the streets it crossed have gone as well. It was a nice structure. There was a garage built into and around one of the arches at one point. It was really, really distinctive. You can't actually see it there. There is a refuge in mid-air at the level where the track bed was, but unfortunately the undergrowth has covered it over. You could see it about halfway up that retaining wall. But yeah, unfortunately it's about 10 years since I was last here, and the undergrowth has grown up and you can't see it anymore, which is a shame. So we'll press on. The tramway did use a bit of the Great Central's viaduct a bit further down, and we'll go down and have a look at that very, very shortly. It's got tram 221 just coming past there. Just a quick view of the modern tram viaduct running on the alignment of the Great Central's one. So the tramway did use a little bit of the Great Central's viaduct. You can just see it there. They've built out the sides of it. That was the Station Street stop, although it's been replaced now with the Nottingham Station one, now that the tramway has been extended a bit further along. But you can see the Great Central's viaduct there. You've got the wider archway there spanning the Nottingham Canal. There we go. Just another quick view of the viaducts there. Now at the end of there, the Great Central line spanned Station Street, which is just ahead of me there, the other side of the lift that you can see. And then it went across the Midland railway station on a large bridge. The Midland weren't best pleased that the Great Central were building a line in competition with them, and they must have been rubbing their hands in glee when it became obvious that the line was going to cross their line, not just anywhere but at the station. Now we can imagine that the conversation went something like this. Great Central: "Hi, can we build a bridge across your station please?" Midland: "Yes, certainly, crack on." Great Central: "Oh, that's very kind of you, thank you." Midland: "There's just a couple of little points that we'd like you to observe." And the Midland's points were that they didn't want any of the supports for the bridge on their land. So in other words, the supports had to be either side and the bridge had to span their station in one go. The second stipulation was they didn't want any interruption to their traffic whilst the bridge was being built. Now they probably thought that was impossible, and they went off laughing in an evil manner into the distance. But the Great Central rose to the challenge and managed to build a bridge that went across the station in one go. They built it next to where it was going to be, and they winched it into position without actually disturbing the traffic on the Midland Railway at all. And there on another postcard view is a picture of the bridge going across the Midland Railway platform. You can see it was a massive, massive structure. Now kudos to the Great Central for rising to the challenge, but there obviously was no health and safety. I wouldn't fancy waiting for a train down on the station platform with that being winched over my head up above, but that's what happened. But there's nothing left of the original structure. I came about 10 years ago and it'd been demolished in the 1970s. There was nothing left of that, or the Station Street Bridge, or the Queen's Road Bridge on the other side of it. The modern tramway replacements that you can just about see here are modern replacements. They don't use any of the components of the original bridge. You can see the modern tramway structure here in this view. So there's the modern Queen's Road Bridge for the tram. Again, it's on the site of the Great Central one, but it owes nothing at all to the Great Central. That had been completely removed many years before the tram bridge was built. Just a quick view there, the front of Nottingham Midland Station. That's what the Great Central were competing with, and that's why Victoria was as grand as it was. So we've got one last station to consider before we finish the walk today, and that is Arkwright Street. Arkwright Street closed in 1963, but it was hastily reopened in 1967 on the closure of Victoria. There was still a diesel multiple unit operated service between Nottingham and Rugby at that time, and it had been used in Victoria, but it wanted to close Victoria to redevelop it and build the Victoria Centre. So they reopened Arkwright Street quite hastily, and they ran the service to there. The service finished in 1969, but the line through it continued until 1974. It was the last bit of the railway in Nottingham to see traffic. What happened, there was an ordnance depot at Ruddington and also a gypsum depot at East Leek, and so the traffic would come up the spur from the Great Northern at Weekday Cross that we saw earlier on, reverse on a head shunt in Thurland Street, Weekday Cross, Victoria Street, tunnel, call it what you want to. They put a pilot loco on the other end, there'd be a loco on the back basically, so they didn't have to run round, they just changed direction. And then they would run down through here and away to either East Leek or Ruddington. In 1974, British Rail put a connection in at Loughborough from the Midland Main Line up to the ex-Great Central line, and that enabled the freight trains for Ruddington and East Leek to come from the Loughborough direction, and it meant that the line in Nottingham could be closed. Nottingham City Council wanted to redevelop this bit, so it was the last bit to see traffic and the first bit to be redeveloped. They didn't just want to redevelop the railway, they wanted to redevelop the whole area. This is the Meadows, and it was an area of terraced houses, corner shops, pubs, etc. They wanted to redevelop the whole lot, so they demolished everything, the railway and all the buildings, they changed the road layout, a lot of roads disappeared. So Arkwright Street station was somewhere here. This is the junction of Arkwright Street and Crocus Street, and it was roughly here somewhere. It was up in the air on the viaduct, the line was still on the viaduct at this point. The modern tramway descends to ground level, as you can see, but it was on a viaduct. Arkwright Street had side platforms. There wasn't enough room on the viaduct really to build an island platform, and to do so would have needed to demolish more buildings either side of the line when they constructed it. So they had side platforms on this one, but it was somewhere around here. It's impossible with all the redevelopment to say exactly where. So we're now on Queen's Walk, which runs along the route of the railway. The railway was on an embankment, it wasn't at ground level. When I came here 10 years ago it was still just a walkway, but now as you can see it's been joined by a tramway as well. They built the tram along it, which is nice to see. There were some lines off to the left as well. There were lines going into the Nottingham goods depot for the Great Central, so there were separate lines leading into that, and we'll see the goods office in a moment. So we're just approaching the goods office. The lines into the goods depot are on the other side of it, but as you can see the area's been redeveloped at least twice. It was done in the 70s and these buildings look much newer than that, so it appears to have been done again. And there it is, folks. What a magnificent building, as you would expect from the Great Central. As I say, the main lines are on this side of it on an embankment, and the goods lines and the goods yard were on the other side of it. Just a shot from the other side there. It's been in council ownership for many years. It's now the Queen's Walk Community Centre, as you can probably see. So some of the grading here is probably left over from the spoil of the railway. The up and down main lines were to the right there where the tram lines are, and there were lines coming out of the goods depot as well, the up and down goods. So by this point the up and down main lines were over to the left a bit. They'd deviated from where the tram lines now are. They were going over towards the left, joined up with the up and down goods coming out of the goods yard. And then both sets of lines passed over the Victoria embankment on a bridge, or on two bridges should I say. There were a couple of arches on the other side, and then they went out over the River Trent on a very large bridge. The bridge over the Trent survived till 1984. Behind me is Wilford Bridge, which was for many years pedestrian only. In 1982 it needed repair, so they closed it to pedestrians and built a temporary pedestrian route up over the old railway bridge. I believe it used the one that had been used by the up and down main lines. As I said, there were two bridges, one for the main lines, one for the goods lines. So the temporary pedestrian route was built in 1982. It went across that bridge to the other side of the river there, and then when the work was completed in 1984 the temporary route was closed and the bridge was unfortunately demolished. Now most sources say there's absolutely nothing left of the bridge, which is more or less correct, but as I said in part 1 when we were at Bulwell looking at the viaduct, this is not most sources, this is the Pacer Chaser channel, and I'll tell you there is a little bit left to see, and I'll just go and show you it now. And there we go folks, as you can see there's a section of engineer's blue brick in the river wall. I don't think it's actually part of the bridge. I think they had to rebuild and reinforce the river wall when they were building the railway, but that's where the bridge was across the Trent. As you can see there's absolutely nothing left of the approach embankments on the other side of Victoria Embankment there, or of the road bridges, or of the arches that went across this little bit of grassland between the road and the riverside walkway. But there is a little tiny reminder that there was a railway there in the form of that blue brick wall. Just a bit of demolition across there, Nottingham always evolving. So I'm going to finish on Wilford Bridge, just overlooking that bit of engineer's blue brick wall I was just looking at from down there. You can see the walkway across the bridge has now been joined by the tramway. So that's the end of this video, and indeed the end of this little series. As I said, I'll put the links to the other parts in the descriptions to all of the videos, so if you have missed one or more of them you can find them from there. There's also an introductory part where I did a bit of history of the Great Central Railway's London extension and its route through Nottingham and why it's been demolished as comprehensively as it has, as we've seen in these parts. But yeah, in part 1 I went from Bulwell down to just south of the site of Bulwell Common Station. Part 2 we looked at a bit of a footbridge that used to be on the Great Central Railway but now isn't. Part 3 we carried on from where we left off in part 1 and went to New Basford Station and the Sherwood Rise Tunnel. Part 4 was a short bit, we just looked at the site of Carrington Station. And then this has been part 5 where we've come from the site of Victoria Station, the other end of Mansfield Road Tunnel that started at Carrington Station, the other end of that down to here at Wilford Bridge. So I hope you've enjoyed this little series. Thank you for watching as always. As the crow flies it's about 8 miles from Bulwell to here, but I think I've done about 10 or 11 with weaving about. So I'm pretty knackered and I'm going to get the tram back into the city centre and go and get the train home. But as always, thank you for watching and take care, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.